Welcome to Your Career Cure podcast, where amazing professionals and entrepreneurs share their inspirational stories so you can get a dose of a happy career, happy life. And now, your host, Gail Tolstoi-Miller.
Welcome, folks. Welcome to Your Career Cure, another episode, and I am so excited. I have Katherine McCord here. She is president of Titan Management. Katherine, why don't you fill in the blanks for me? What is Titan Management? What do you do? Tell the folks out there.
I will. And first of all, thank you very, very much for having me today. I'm very excited to be on the show. I love my company. I just want to say that first. I'm very proud of it. I'm very excited about it. So I run a direct hire recruiting firm that focuses on smaller companies and entrepreneurs. We also do equity and diversity and equity inclusion. Sorry, my brain just stopped for just a second. I apologize. It's been quite a day.
We're in a COVID era, okay? I think we all have like COVID brain, even if you don't have COVID, right?
I have, yeah, right. I'm telling you. So we're going to start offering DEI soon through a wonderful partnership that I have formed on LinkedIn. And we also do employee relations consulting as well, because little companies tend to have trouble finding those kinds of resources at an affordable rate. And that's actually why I started my firm. Is I was working for a wonderful IT recruiting firm in the Dallas area. And I loved the work and I love headhunting. I really, really do. I tell people I get to steal for a living, which is kind of cool, you know?
Yeah.
I get to go get these employees from here and bring them over here. But they didn't like taking care of the little guys, and they really treated their smaller clients like dirt. And I didn't like that. And so I decided to break out and do it different and treat the candidates differently and treat the clients differently, price accordingly. Mm-hmm. And that's what we do. And I love it. Yeah, I love everything.
So how'd you get started in recruiting?
Okay. So actually that story goes all the way back to childhood for me.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So my mother worked in recruiting from the time I was very, very small, and she would go to conventions and things like that. And my version of playing house was to set up a convention and make her fill out a resume and an application and come interview with me. I mean, small child. This is what I was doing in my playtime.
That's awesome. Because most recruiters, I find, it's accidental.
Right? Yeah.
No one sets out to be a recruiter. Okay.
I fought it for a while as an adult. I did. I fought it. But there was no fighting it. I love it. I love it. And then I had worked for entrepreneurs for years for small companies. And I love it. I love helping them grow their businesses. That's really something that lights me up inside. And then one day I got an opportunity to help a small business, that recruiting firm, help them grow. I ended up getting on the phone and recruiting, and I really, really loved it. And here we are.
So did you start from day one in recruiting, or did you have another career before
I started as... Oh, no. Like early on, I did everything under the sun. I was a job hopper on purpose. I wanted to learn everything. Oh. And yeah, I did. I would learn something and go, okay, bye. I'm off to the next thing.
How long did you stay typically? What was the average?
It depends. Usually like 6 to 12 months. I did a lot of contract work. So that kind of helped with that, because it kind of, it's kind of more permissive. That way people like that better at that point. But I was a great employee everywhere I went. Aced it. Learned everything I could. I worked in financial services. I worked as an assistant. I helped a retail company that built these really incredible sports shoes get off the ground and get their whole programs running, learned how to build a website there, did all that whole thing. I worked with a travel partner to the Dallas Cowboys for a while. That was incredible, doing event management. I did all kinds of things. And then I'd always been part of the hiring team. I was always involved in that. So I knew how to do it. And then with the upbringing I had with my mother, it really just kind of everything, the practical application just solidified everything for me. And then when I started working for that recruiting company, I just immediately took to it.
Yeah.
Immediately took to it. I didn't like how they did it, but I immediately took to the general premise of it.
It's interesting that you said you were a job hopper, and we know
I
as
was.
recruiter, right? And we know as recruiters, there's
Yeah,
bias.
people don't like it. They don't. They don't like it. What's funny? I've built recruiting teams out for other companies. I've done it. And I rarely hire other recruiters because they're snooty. It's true. And I like to build better habits and things like that. And I've hired people from fast food backgrounds to do recruiting and that excelled and were phenomenal at the job. I've hired people with security backgrounds. I've hired people with management. Actually, I have hired a few managers. Sales, obviously.
Mhm.
Sales is a real good one for recruiting.
Mhm.
And they were all phenomenal. And that's another kind of trend that I like to break is this idea that you have to have experience in a field in order to be good at it. Recruiting, much like sales, is almost ingrained in you. You either know how to talk to people and know how to match people, or you don't.
Right. And you
And
have
you can
to,
learn a
everyone
lot.
has to start somewhere, right? We
You
all
do.
start somewhere and we all
Yeah.
have to get a chance and then you learn and grow. I think companies overthink their
They do.
requirements and they think it's more than it really is.
Yep.
Unless you're doing brain surgery, okay? Most people could do the job, just give them a chance and they can learn on the job like everyone else. You learn on the job no matter what.
Yep. I had, in fact, my very best interview I ever had. I was working for a security company building out their national recruiting team. And this young man comes into my office in a suit and tie. He knocks very politely, but I was not expecting him. And he came in and he said, "Are you Miss Catherine?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Are you hiring for recruiters?" I said, "Yes." And he goes, "I would like to interview. And this is my day off. Do you have any time?" "Yes, I do." And he sat down in front of me. And this young man had been a security guard, and had just gotten his business degree. And he went through he put his resume in front of me and I pushed it aside. I said, "Tell me about you." And he told me everything about him that made him amazing. All of the skills he had, which he had a ton of relevant skills. And you wouldn't think that with his employment background, he had a ton of relevant skills. And then he looked at me and said, "If you hire me, it will be the best decision you ever made." And I hired him. And within 6 months, he had 2 raises and he was my best producer. Get this, he outproduced the person closest to him by an extra 50% almost.
Wow. See, I
Yeah.
think, that's a great example of how someone really said, choose me. You're not going to go wrong. And I think people are so nervous to really take that extra step to say that. Like, look, I know on paper, I might not be ideal. I know there are other recruiters that you're going to be interviewing, but I've got the drive. I want this. There's nothing wrong with doing that. And it shows that you want it, you have initiative. And I think there's like some kind of playbook out there. You got to play it cool and, no, especially if you're, and especially in recruiting what we do. And I know we're going to like touch upon many different topics, but especially on the agency side, right?
Yeah.
You want that person that really is a go-getter.
Yeah, that hunter. That's what you want. That's sharp.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
that's he's gonna just dive in. And I tell people too, I don't care how many hours you work. That's how I work with my group. Everybody's remote. And I say, I don't care how many hours a day you work. Don't care. Do you get the job done? That's it. If you can do that 2 hours a day, power to you. You'll get paid the same as everybody else. I don't care.
That's awesome. More companies need to follow that, right? It's always about how many hours you work, watching the clock, right?
Yeah, just get the job done. And some days that means that you work 14 hours and it stinks.
Right.
And other days it means you work 3 or 4. I mean, that's just reality. And you're right about that people focus on the wrong things when they're hiring, right? And I actually recently did a post on LinkedIn called "Resumes Must Be Stopped." Because people focus on all the wrong things. And I've had people go, "I don't like the font on this resume. I'm not interviewing them." Come on, people. And then people get stuck on inconsequential details like, "Oh, well, I don't like that they had this 6-month employment gap." Yeah, but they were at every job for 5 years.
I always say,
I don't know what you're saying
I always say to my clients, there was something personal, like you don't know what's going on in someone's life.
Right.
So God forbid, and I hate to use these examples, but sometimes you got to go there to the extreme example. You know what? This person was at this company because you know what? Their child had cancer and they
Yeah.
had to take time off. So when you look
And
at
I
that
see stuff like
resume,
that all the
you just
time.
put it in the no pile, not knowing that. You
Yeah.
tell me that that's not a good enough reason?
I know.
They
The
create,
two
yeah.
the two biggest reasons for gaps of employment, I've actually done research on this, are taking care of a loved one due to illness,
It's very
and
common.
for women, pregnancy and birth. And just because you bring another human into the world doesn't mean you are useless. And this is coming from a woman with no children. So who is married to her career. I've never understood that. And I took time off actually not too long after high school. I was working for the Red Cross and my mother got diagnosed with late stage 4 leukemia, a very rare form. Oh, she's fine. And
but still, that's a tough thing to go through. That's not
it was interesting. I ended up, my dad was away working. I ended up with custody of my little sister, who was 10 years my junior. I was taking care of a cancer patient in my spare time. I had to leave my job and do this. And it was a remarkable experience. People think, oh, how traumatic. No, it was remarkable. And I formed an even more beautiful bond with my mother, with my sister. I learned a lot about myself and what I could do, and I learned fortitude, and it was a really powerful experience. And so whenever I see something like that, that tells me something about that person, because I know what it's like to be a caregiver, and it's not easy. It's a kick in the teeth, and I would much rather be working at almost any job in this entire world than having to do that again.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So if you can do that, that's really remarkable. And so I hate that employment gap thing. It really is a pet peeve of mine.
Yeah.
Just look at it. And then another one, of course, you get all the isms with resumes. So I tell people, let's just talk to people and find out who they are. Plus, did you know that literally 91% of candidates on the market today do not know how to make a resume appropriately?
Oh, yeah.
We don't feel comfortable. And that's crazy to me. Why are we focusing so much on that? That's nuts.
Yeah, it's like the person with the best resume wins. I don't know if this
you're not
happened with
for that.
I can't tell you how many times that I place people with clients that they had their resume in the database for like a year or 6 months and never called them. And then I take the time because I could read between the lines, because I know they don't know how to write their resume, but I'm going to call them because I feel like there's something there, and they end up hiring them. Yeah. It's like, right. For all the mistakes that corporate recruiters make, I'm making money off of it. Right.
Oh yeah. I've done that. And I've had people go, oh, well, we had them in our database. I said, but you didn't call them. I did. So I get my fee. That's how that works. And then how dumb do you feel?
Exactly.
You had this great person the whole time.
I just want to say, if you're a corporate recruiter and you're pulling that kind of stuff, don't do it. Okay. If you've someone in your database and you haven't called them at all, and a recruiter goes out of their way and they call them and you like them, they are owed a fee. I'm sorry. Don't do that. That is disrespectful. I've been on both sides of the fence. I've been on the corporate side and the agency side. Shame on you that you're.
They get their fee. That's how that works.
That's it. So I've seen companies trying to pull that, like they don't want that. Yeah.
Try being the operative word.
So I'm just my 2 cents.
No, 100%. That is a big pet peeve of mine as a recruiter, is you didn't see the talent I did. Too bad for you. Don't know what to tell you. Yeah. Don't know what to tell you on that. And that's another thing too, working in agency. I mean, sometimes, and this is why I think we can relate just as well to HR as other HR people, is that we still have to deal with hiring managers and we still have to deal with all the nonsense. So we know that communication is not always strong. People have different ideas of what a job looks like. And that's why the very first thing I tell my clients to do is get together and everyone agree on what the job looks like before I get started. Because I don't want this person telling me this person telling me something else, and then the person that pays the bills give me an entirely different job description. Right. This is not helpful. It doesn't help anybody. Get together and then let's get going. That's how it ought to go. And
So you mentioned no resumes. So what's
yeah,
the alternative? I mean, I know there's software out there that,
I'm actually building an alternative. So we all know as recruiters that applicant tracking systems stink out loud. We all know that they are horrible. From just A to Z, they just have so many problems. And so what I've done is I've partnered with Hiring Thing, who actually kind of their main claim to fame is that they help other ATSs kind of build out. So not saying that this is a client of theirs, but just as an example, somebody like Jazz HR or something, would start with their platform, elaborate on it, and then turn around and sell it. So that's kind of their claim to fame. So they've been around for quite a while. They're a major player. I've partnered with them, and what we're doing is we're creating a system that basically hides the resume and creates instead a very detailed candidate profile that focuses on skills, experience, education, volunteer, and it actually has an option to help match them to the skills in the position and the priority skills. So you can say, what's your not years of experience,
right,
but what is your level of expertise with these things? Because years of experience doesn't matter. What you care about is expertise. Do you want somebody that's been doing it for 20 years that stinks, or somebody that's been doing it for 4 that's the best?
right.
So it does that. It shows you their average tenure, so you can see if they're reliable or or what have you. And instead of the name, it gives a headline like on LinkedIn that describes them. And the idea here, by removing name, date, all that, is to remove any potential bias and anything that could potentially distract from what actually matters about this candidate. So then when you like the candidate, you want to set something up, you send them an email, they agree to move forward in the process. And then at that time, you can see their contact information, their name of the person with whom you've just set an appointment. And that's how it works. And then everything else from that is relatively standard to an ATS. You can disposition them, you can send them documents within the system, all of that. But the idea is to focus the hiring where it should be, on the skills and the abilities, and to remove bias, for the love of Pete, because there's so much of it in hiring.
It's crazy. It really is.
Now, what is another crazy story about that, by the way, if you don't mind me sharing? This
absolutely
blew my mind today on LinkedIn. Just blew my mind. So I had done a post and somebody commented. It was a former recruiter who said that she worked for a company and it would say T at the top, TA, or NTA at the top of job recs. She's like, well, what does this mean? And they said, well, we'll tell you after your probation period. You have to be here through your probation period, which that would have been a big red flag to me. Like, why is there something you can't tell me until the end of my probation period? So she gets to the end of her probation period, asks about it again. What they admitted that it stood for were tinted applicants allowed and not tinted applicants. Yeah, that was about my reaction. And the word tinted being used just threw me for a loop.
Disgusting.
And it's vile. And I've seen some pretty overt, gross discrimination over the years, don't get me wrong, especially on the age side. But that threw me. That was just, and that still happens, and people don't realize that.
So how did she react to that?
She left.
Good.
She quit. Walked right. I told them exactly what she thought of them and walked right on out.
Awesome. Because what happens is, as a recruiter, then you're almost like an accomplice to it, right?
Yeah.
If you may not agree with it, but then it's like, well, this is my job. But if you agree to that and you continue, you are an accomplice to it.
Yes.
And recruiters need to stand up.
Yes.
And
nothing ever should come before integrity and before ethics, ever. Nothing ever. I have walked out of jobs for ethical reasons and just said, forget this. And I mean, at a time when I really should not have been walking out of a job. Nothing can come before that. And I've had people come to me and say things like, the client has asked for this or that. And then well, then tell the client we follow EEOC and ADA with pride, and we will not be doing that. And sometimes you have to help them distinguish what they mean. Some people will say, I don't want an older person. And what they mean is I need high energy. Or I don't want a woman. And what they mean is I need somebody who's physically strong and or intimidating, like if it's a security role or something like that, So sometimes you have to help them interpret it.
Right.
But people have got to get over their biases, and you have to work on that, because as a recruiter, you'll even start to develop some, you'll have some bad experiences with a string of candidates, and you'll just, I don't like people from New York. I've had a recruiter that refused to recruit from New York, would not do it. And we had to work on that.
Why?
Because a string of very bad experiences, to be really, really fair, like just right in a row, just really, really bad. And so we just had to get past that and just keep on going. And we did, and it worked out just fine. But you have to get those biases out of your head. And people, I think, sometimes don't realize how bad it is. And when I talk about some of this stuff on the show, like the fact that I had a recruiter 2 years ago who told me she couldn't drive down her street on Friday nights because of a Klan meeting. Literally, this is 2 years ago.
Oh my God.
People think that because they don't see it, that it's not real. And so I think when a lot of people hear discrimination in hiring, when a lot of people think about these things, they don't understand how bad it really, really still is. It's bad. And the wage gap issue, people go, oh, well, the African-American people in my company are getting paid the same as the white people. Well, yeah, for the same education, location, all that. The disparity comes when people see that disparity, they don't realize that it's an average. And the disparity comes because women and minorities are not being promoted to executive decision level making roles. And that's where the disparity comes from. People don't realize that. It's not, women get promoted to managing other people, but not to decision making. And when 12% of the Fortune 500 companies, only 12% have either a minority or a woman in executive position, that's disgusting. That's super gross. We're over 60% of the workforce.
And, companies think they're doing a great job because they have the boxes checked. Oh, our numbers look great. But when you dig deeper, who are getting the better projects, who are getting promoted more, who are getting to the higher level. And that's really your gauge of, it's not just like, okay, we've got this woman, we've got a Black person, great, let's stick them here.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. It's so funny. And I'm like, no, that's not how that works. and it's really funny too, because a lot of people don't realize that they'll come up with these ridiculous things like, oh, women don't ask to be promoted. Women do not ask for projects and things like that. Well, there's an episode of my show where in fact, the last discrimination episode, the first one, where I gave the sites on this, but women actually have a 2%, which isn't a lot, but a 2% higher average of raising their hand for promotions, for projects, to be on a special team, that kind of thing. Women actually ask for that kind of thing more than men. We actually also negotiate salary more than men, which is a common misconception. And minorities are, in fact, this one I do know, the citation on this is from the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. People say minorities are lazy. Really? Because a higher percentage of minorities participate in the workforce than Caucasian people. Fact. Look it up. So all of these little things that people get in their heads are just fake. And they come from all different ridiculous sources. Sometimes our own experience, sometimes TV, sometimes bad parenting that we experience, sometimes society. But it's time to break away from that and remember to hire the person, not their wrapping, right? Not all this stuff that's on the outside, not my age, not my gender, not my race, even things like sexuality and stuff. Like, who cares? Exactly. What do you bring to the table? And when you hire for diversity, a lot of people don't realize, and Boston Consulting Group did a great study on this and figured out that you get 19% higher revenue on average per year when you hire true diversity. So people from different backgrounds, different religions, different ethnicities, and different age groups. And the reason is that you have a better understanding of your audience, of your client base.
Of course.
Yeah.
I always think of like,
fascinating.
Yeah, totally. I mean, if you've got a bunch of men and actually the purchasing power is 80% women.
Yep.
So if your organization is filled with men, how are you going to completely understand that, right? To be in a mind of a woman. and understand what motivates her and what drives her.
100%.
And you could
100%.
still have surveys and all that, but there's always, those little nuances that just being a man, you're not going to know on the most part.
Right.
Now, I don't want to stereotype, but
no, but just from, and there's things that we wouldn't understand about being a man. There's just little things that happen with your body, that happen with hormones, all of that kind of thing that you just don't experience if you're not on that side of the fence. Right.
Right.
Just, I mean, that's just reality. And I think, and it has been funny to me. I've had a lot of people ask me, well, why don't these things bother you? And there's those people, and they always give the one-off example, the person that rises above and all this kind of thing. And my response to that is, it's great that they overcame, but they shouldn't have to. That's the idiocy. You shouldn't have to overcome anything. Just everybody get a fair shake. If you're qualified, if you're smart, if you're a hard worker, here you go. Let's do this. I've taught 66-year-old people, 2 of them, how to recruit, how to come into a completely brand new industry, and they both did very, very well. And people always go, oh, old dogs can't learn new tricks. Yes, they can. Yes, they can. Don't be ridiculous.
I had a client tell me that I fired them on the spot.
Good for you. Mm-hmm. Good for you. I fired clients for all kinds of things.
I fired because I brought it to executive level. They did nothing about it. And it's a company that everybody knows. And I was just mortified. So years of doing business with them. And I just said, nope, done.
Yep. I've done similar. I can't stand it. The first time, and I will always, like you did, I will take it to another level. I will give a second chance to kind of rethink it and regroup, and if it doesn't happen, sorry for you. It comes back to that ethics and integrity.
Exactly.
That's what it's all about. You can't, and I won't let that waver in terms of my client care. And I won't let it waver in terms of my candidate care. And people go, well, candidates are just the product. No, they're human beings. I will never, and I understand the concept behind that, but I will never call candidates my product, because that dehumanizes them. And then that's when you start to just treat them like a thing and not remember that they're people with real life things going on.
Right.
Yeah.
So what's your advice to candidates? I mean, it's, this whole process is cumbersome, and now we've got COVID. What's your advice to candidates at this point to get the upper edge?
That's actually originally why I started my show Career Launch Live, was to help candidates through COVID, because it was monstrous. Nobody was giving them advice. And I will say that some of the best advice I've seen came from Trevor Houston on the Who You Know show. And he really, really, really promotes, it's not what you know, but it's who you know. And you need to be networking, folks. There is no better way to get a job and to get the right job, because when it's people that know you, they know what culture you're going to fit into, they know your needs, they understand how to make a proper intro to the hiring manager for you, which is also a pro of working with a recruiter. But if it's somebody that knows you personally, it's also really, really nice. And network with recruiters. Send videos of yourself. Be personable. Yeah. One of the best things I've gotten from a candidate was a thank you video. And it was so cute. It had like little music behind it and all this kind of stuff. And it was really adorable. I've seen people that send e-cards to recruiters, just polite holiday e-cards. And that keeps you fresh in their minds. Because guys, as much as we want to remember all of you, and I'm sure you'll agree, Gail, we can't. We try so hard, but we cannot possibly remember everyone that we speak to or that comes through our database. So just get out there and communicate with people and network with people, and video.
But I also think like you should communicate in the medium that you shine, because not everybody is great on video.
It's true. That is true.
Right.
And that's
so I feel like we place too much. Yeah. Like, let's say someone is like on the shy side or more introverted and they don't feel comfortable. I feel like they get less points, right? We judge extroverts at a higher scale as a positive rather than the introverts.
I will tell you a secret about that. And I do agree, by the way, especially in interviewing. People that work in hiring are notorious for expecting the interviewee to be professional at interviewing. I'm like, no, that's your job. When you're in HR, management, all that, that's your job to be a professional interviewer, not theirs. They can be horrible. That's fine. You just need to find out if they're going to be good at the actual job you're hiring them for. But what surprised me when I brought up the video thing. At first, I was not very supportive of that idea for exactly the reason that you said. And then I realized that some of the best videos I was getting were from true introverts. And they were practicing and they were getting better.
Right.
But because they could do it, it wasn't live. They could practice, they could redo, they could get it right. And especially for those people that are very meticulous about things, that actually worked out very, very well. So for a lot of introverts, recording yourself can actually be good for them. I've learned that shocked me. I would not have ever thought that in a million years. And then also things like e-cards, because maybe they're better at writing,
Yeah.
but it's still that personal touch. So either
I'm an
way,
extreme introvert. So, like I've tested, I'm like so on the scale, like crazy. And no one ever thinks I am, but I'm such an introvert.
same.
That and yeah, so practice, that's what I do. I like practice. And the more you do it, the more you come out of your shell.
Yep.
And you get better at it, you feel more comfortable. But again, the e-card thing, if you just don't want to be bothered with that, that's okay too. Just do the e-card. Yeah.
Yeah, just do the e-card.
Just
Something,
within-
just stand out. Just something different.
Exactly. It's those little details, just the little something that takes 2 seconds, boom.
Yeah.
Because it's just, I think it's overwhelming with all the technology
Yeah.
that you just become a number. So yeah.
And you do. That's so true. And actually, that's another reason that I'm creating the ATS that I am, is it will let everybody through, because a lot of the ATSs, as you know, will kick somebody out for not having keywords and things like that. People should not be judged based on their resume writing skills, unless you're hiring them to be a resume writer.
You know what? I spent years recruiting just HR professionals, and a lot of them were recruiters, and they couldn't do that. They're like, oh my gosh, I could do everybody else's, but when it comes to mine, I can't. I'm like, I'm stuck. So even recruiters can't do their own resumes.
Yeah,
They should know.
I know. Yeah. And it actually, what's real weird to me is I've been getting asked lately for resumes for like people that want to see me on their shows and stuff. I'm going, why would I have a resume? I've been owning my own business for years. Here's a profile of me.
Yeah.
I don't have a resume anymore. Come on now. Yeah, I'd be horrible at it by now. Honestly, writing one for myself, I can't even imagine.
Okay, so I have a question for you. What was your worst career moment in your career?
Okay, so actually, this is the story that I came up with for that question. Is I'm going to tell on myself a little bit here. This is my bad. This was a mess up I feel like I had. I had an employee a while back, a few years ago, no names, obviously, and who had obviously suffered a trauma by some of the behaviors that were exhibited. And some of them were really not preferential for an office setting. We'll just put that out there, especially very rude towards women, and didn't want to hear what a woman had to say about it. And not, he was fine.
So was it a male or a female?
It was a male.
Okay, I don't want to assume, because it could be a female. Okay.
That's right. And he was fine with me, and he was polite in general, but there were just certain times that if you maybe said something a little too quick or something, that it would just, and it was in a way that it wasn't, you could tell it wasn't a bias. There was something going on there, because there would be like zoning out after and just some other symptoms. And I recognized that. And instead of responding the best way possible, and I never ask people their traumas, by the way, I want to throw that out there. Never ask somebody their trauma. That is not your business.
Mm-hmm. Not
your business at all. You can check on them and make sure that they're okay, but do not ask them the details of their trauma. I didn't handle it the best. And I feel like I could have done more to work with him one-on-one than I did. And instead of that, I did not work with him a lot one-on-one. I used the excuse in my head that I was very busy. And an explosion happened one day that resulted in him getting fired. That I feel like I could have prevented by being a better manager and taking the time to work with him more on acclimating back to a regular work environment. I feel like I could have done a whole lot more. And so the worst day in my career was the day I had to fire him, because I felt like I failed.
Yeah.
I failed because I knew there was something there. Later on, I found out what it was, and it is the most horrible story I think I've ever heard in my whole life.
Oh, really?
And yeah, it's awful, just awful. And it was just something out of a movie. It was so bad. And I just think to myself, if I had just taken those extra steps and worked and, just made those little extra efforts, would that have been better? How could I have made this better? And I think it would have been. So that's the lesson that I take with me is
so I think like more empathy in the workplace.
More empathy, yes, and also more resources. I've started seeing, this is exciting to me. This is something that came out of COVID. A lot more companies are talking about mental health and offering mental health benefits even at the office, which I think is spectacular. So I love to see stuff like that. But even if that's not a thing, if you see something going on with somebody, take the time to help them. Take that time. Always do it. I've done it since.
Right.
Because that lesson is burned into my brain.
That's awesome. At least you learned from it. Sometimes you got to learn the hard way.
Yeah,
right?
I prefer not to, but I sure did. Yeah. Yeah, but that's the one I take with me. Yeah.
Have you tracked him? Like, do you know what he's up to now? Do you have any idea?
I do. And he's having a great career and he's okay.
Oh, good.
And he got help.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
So even though what you did, you regret, maybe, look, I believe in sometimes things happen the way they're supposed to. And maybe if you didn't do that, his projection would have been he would have gone in a different way. Maybe he would have gotten to the place that he is today.
Maybe.
But still doesn't. Yeah. But that's a good lesson.
It is. It is a great lesson. And I wouldn't say I have guilt about it, but I'm very mindful because of that situation. Yeah. Very, very mindful because of that. So
good. So how do you think COVID, I mean, this is a huge topic, has changed the landscape of everything? Like, what are you experiencing right now?
Honestly, I think the biggest change is that people are now starting to have bigger expectations from their employers in terms of being treated more humanly and allowing the human element. And that is so exciting to me. That is so exciting to me. And I think that's going to be something that's going to start sticking. And one thing I've told some employers recently is you better suck it up and you better start paying attention and you better start preparing yourself, because employees are going to start coming to you. New employees are going to start coming and saying, I want this benefit. I want that benefit. I want the option to be remote. I want the option to take off on a half day every Friday to go see my kid's football game or whatever it is. And people are going to expect that kind of flexibility now.
Yeah. Because we know pre-COVID, companies would say there's no flexibility, this can't be done, you have to be in the office. And now we realize, no, they don't have to be in the office to be
in
productive.
Most cases. There are cases, I just want to specify, like, you're a nurse, please be there on time. Stuff like that. But no, seriously, unless your job, and even call center jobs, I understand that you have to, slot a certain way and all that. I get that. But even then, I think they're starting to realize you can work from home. Who cares?
Oh, yeah. When I call customer service, they all say, oh, I'm at home right now because of COVID. They're all doing it.
I was talking to a lady the other day, her kid just came wandering in like, hey, what's going on? It's so funny.
It's almost better because you feel like you get to know the person. I almost feel like it helps their business because then you get to know the person on the phone and you feel like there's more of a person, like a connection.
For certain things, yes. The only one I really decided I don't like, and I really thought about this, I thought, am I just being selfish or is this reasonable? And I've decided that it's reasonable, is I don't like banking associates working from home. I don't want you pulling up my bank account and all because I don't know who else has access to your home, to your Wi-Fi. That's the only one I am not comfortable with.
Yeah.
Working from home. You need to be somewhere safe. Keep my money safe. And credit cards, same kind of thing. But yeah, everybody else, go work at home. Who cares? Yeah, I'll talk to your kid. I've had kids pop onto my show a couple of times. I've had them come into interviews, but I do warn people, if your child comes into the interview, I will interview them too.
Oh no.
I do. And it's really cute. It's really, really cute.
Oh, that's funny.
I always have
that's a whole nother thing because, as we know, employers really shouldn't be asking about, do you have children? So it kind of blows the lid.
So many times.
But
And I'm that person that'll tell you, you shouldn't be asking me that. And I know it's going to cost me the interview, but I don't care at that point anyway. So
yeah,
I'll just tell people, just so you know, you can't ask that. It's a big no.
but then on the other hand, it's good to see how a company reacts to that with your
Mhm.
child maybe coming into the interview.
Right.
And are they being respectful? Because maybe if they're not going to be respectful when you need to take time off. Right. So
Right.
maybe it is, even though they're not supposed to know, it's kind of good to see how they react to it.
Right. And I think if it's something like this, where it's
Yeah.
a video interview or something, like that's fine. That's a completely, you can't help what you just see. That's just life. But I think that I see both sides of that, because on the one hand, I don't care too much if a kid wanders in, depending on the circumstance. The other day, I had somebody try to do an interview with me with a screaming baby, literally right next to them. And I'm going, okay, I understand COVID and all that, but the baby could be in the crib and you could be in another room. Baby's going to cry either way. They put him in there, let him sit there, and let's do this. And something, because I couldn't even hear. It was just ridiculous.
Yeah.
So I understand the balance. I understand that your kids may need to be there and I may hear them occasionally, but to have a baby screaming or a dog barking or whatever it is right in your ear for 30 to 45 minutes straight is insane. So you got to kind of balance that, right?
Yeah.
You kind of, okay, get somebody, if you're interviewing, get somebody to watch your kids for you.
Right.
That's very important.
But sometimes it's not possible if your spouse is out, they're working retail or they're a doctor, and it's a very difficult time right now. So
it is. I have a lot more flexibility. I do.
Yeah, we have to be flexible.
Yeah.
We have to.
Like I said, as long as they're not screaming in my ear for 30 minutes straight.
My dog was barking for a while in another interview. I was like, oh.
It's so funny. Oh, I've had that happen. I've had cats meowing. I had a bird squawk for like 10 minutes one time in an interview.
And then it's weird because there's like, do you scream at your dog? And then the person's like, oh my gosh, they sound abusive. Like, shut up, be quiet.
My favorite was, I forget which childhood nursery rhyme it was, but in the middle of an interview, all of a sudden I started hearing the singing of a childhood nursery rhyme, something like London Bridge or something like that. And I just kind of sat there because I thought that voice just sounds so odd. And the lady could see me. It was a Zoom. And she starts laughing. She said, do you hear my bird? And I was like, oh, it's your bird.
That's crazy.
Like, is that a kid? I couldn't peg it. And it was so quiet. It wasn't a big deal, but I was just going, what is that? What is that funny sound that's in the background? And it was her bird singing to me, which I took as a positive.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool. Right. That's cool. All right. So we are getting towards the end and we're going to go through the career cure round. Okay.
All right.
Imagine you were in a contest, a career cure contest, and you could win $50 million. Now, you're not going to win 50. Sorry to say. Okay. What I think I might do actually is get all of the answers from all the interviews over the year and have an actual contest.
Oh, that would be fun. That would be fun. I like that.
You are going to be in a contest, okay? But you're just not going to win 50 million. Sorry to
fine. Fine. I guess I'll give you an answer anyway.
Okay. Yes. Give me your best. First question. Okay. So you got to give a cure, the best cure that you come up with. Okay. One cure. I'm going to keep it short. So I'm going to ask it. Okay.
Okay.
First one. You have to come up with a career cure for any mistakes that someone has made during their career or entrepreneur. You can wave a magic wand. What would it be? What kind of words of wisdom would you give?
Loyalty to a company that doesn't deserve it. That's, I think, the number one mistake that you can make in your career is being loyal to a company that doesn't deserve it.
Okay.
Honestly.
So what should they do? Leave?
So
like what are you saying?
The cure is be confident enough and secure enough to know that you're worth more than that and go. And it's okay to try to find a job first before you leave. That's fine. I understand that. Mm-hmm. But if you're not getting where you need to be loyal to your own self-interest first. And that sounds super selfish, but it's the right way to be when it comes to your career. Do what's best for you first.
Awesome.
when it comes to
Okay.
your career.
Second question is, what would be the cure for, I should know this question. Okay. Corporate America.
Oh, God.
We know there's so many issues with corporate America. What would be the one cure that you would give to overcome the issues that they have? Like, come up with like the biggest thing that you could think of, like the best cure.
Honestly, I think that the biggest problem with corporate America, and there's so many, but I think that the biggest one is the gap between the person at the top and the person at the bottom. And I don't think that there's enough. I don't think that there is enough control over or emphasis put on honoring the people that day to day run your company. Great, you came up with it, yay for you, but these people make it work every single day, and there should not be a, what is it, 247 times the gap between those two. So the cure I would have is to say, all right, you can make all the millions and billions you want to, as long as these guys are getting paid in terms of the equity of your company. So you can't just pay them. What I mean by that is, if you can't just pay them the average salary for a, let's say, Java developer, it needs to be based on the revenue of your company. So the value for a developer at Facebook is a lot more than at Joe Schmo's little, 2-person shop down the street that's only making $500K a year. Those are two very different positions. If somebody's keeping Facebook running, they should be making about 3 times what the other person is making.
Okay. All right, cool. Last question. You need to come up with a cure for someone who is feels very stuck. So you have to come up with a cure for getting unstuck, either in their career, job search, or even an entrepreneur. Pick one. What's your advice? What's your cure?
My number one cure is to get out of your comfort zone and stay there. Just get out of there. Just do something at least once a week that makes you massively uncomfortable. Massively. And I will give a very wonderful example of this. Janice Downey is becoming very quickly a good friend of mine. She started off as a viewer of my show, and I got to know her. I ended up doing some consulting for her. And I called her one day and said, "You're going to be on my show in 2 weeks." For 2 weeks straight, she contacted me at least once a day, telling me how she could never do it. She's very introverted. She's very awkward. I could never do it. I could never do it. I could never do it. She did it, aced it. Everyone loved her segment. And then I got a message from her 5 minutes later saying, "I can't wait to do it again. When can I do it again?" Yeah.
Awesome.
And so she learned a whole new skill, and then she started doing other videos and doing other things. And
Cool.
she learned a whole new skill about herself. It's a whole new skill about herself. That's not right English. She learned a whole new lesson about herself.
This I'm telling you, I got COVID. I can't even.
COVID brain.
Come
COVID
out
brain.
right.
Yeah, and so she learned a whole new lesson about herself. So get out of your comfort zone and stay there. Do something crazy and new every single week.
Awesome cure. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for being on an episode of Your Career Cure. It was amazing. Tell the viewers, how can they contact you?
Okay, so there's several different ways. Definitely connect with me on LinkedIn, please. Katherine McCord, I'm very, very easy to find. I'm the one and only, it seems to be, in this country. I seriously, I at least on LinkedIn. I have Career Launch Live, which you can find on YouTube, Facebook, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and also on, I think I said LinkedIn Live earlier. You can see us on all of those. And then also, if you want to find me, my website is titanmanagementusa.com. Please reach out.
And I'm going to list it for the viewers so they know.
Oh, okay.
Anything new coming out that you want to promote?
Yes, my applicant tracking system that I was talking about
Awesome.
earlier launches in about a month. We're going to have a mini launch to about 25 people to start with, and then it's going to grow from there. So probably late March, it will be available to kind of everybody, but we're really, really excited about it. And I'm going to be speaking at the HR Disruptor Summit coming up in June, talking about that and giving a whole preview of it and talking about the problems with the ATS. So
exciting. Very exciting.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I wish you the best of luck with that.
Thank you so much, Gail. It's been a true pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for being on Your Career Cure. Have an awesome day.